So this is a follow-up video, and this is for people with BPD, and you can chime in. You see, the myth that borderline is driven by a fear of abandonment has been propagated, and it's totally false, because if you actually take a look, what happens is the split is really just about the micro focus of the moment. You see, when the person gets triggered and they have anger as well as a sense of being suffocated or stifled or stuck or suppressed. You see, the self-suppression is the result of an emotional state of one of the other triggers, like stuck and paralyzed, that was part of the development of the ego complex of borderline in childhood. And so there was a stifling, there was a suppression, there was abuse, and there was an accumulation of internalized anger. And the anger is self-directed, and the anger often will make the person feel mad at themselves for the sense of stuckness or their unwillingness to act until the anger reaches a threshold that will breach the stuckness. And this will do so on a logical basis where the perception of whatever the circumstances is will lose importance relative to the amount of anger that is swelling inside the person with BPD. And during no point in time during this cycle, it's so micro-focused on the object of the anger, the cause. And there's such an accumulation of overwhelming evidence to support the split cycle that this person, this individual over here is in fact bad. That the execution of this has nothing to do with abandonment. It has to do with the immediate need to protect oneself or to get justice or to simply have the cathartic release of the anger upon the parties that are perceived to be at the source or the cause of this afflicted state. And so when you look at somebody with BPD, they can destroy a relationship because they will have no awareness of the big picture of the relationship in this split cycle. And so this emergent anger has absolutely no concern about the big picture of the relationship. It doesn't even have any recollection of any of the good things that have happened. In fact, everything that was good is likely to be recontextualized as manipulation or further evidence of the deception or betrayal that the person with BPD may be experiencing. And so when they say that it's all about the avoidance of abandonment, that's not it at all. That this was about being hurt and suppressed by caregivers, and many people with BPD are fiercely independent. That they have to be self-reliant. And so they're going to be often people that disrupt relationships and discard people. And that's not about the avoidance of abandonment. It may look like, getting rid of someone before they could get rid of you, but that wasn't really the problem. You see, there will be an experience of being alone and abandoned that can be part of this, but that really isn't the crux of what motivates the behaviors. You see, all the logic of psychology is totally absent the experiential reality of how the ego forms and how it mechanically operates. You see, the underlying triggers of all egos, I'm not good enough, judged, disrespected, not belonging, not mattering, being misunderstood, something's wrong with me. All of these are part of the same complex that borderline has, except the anger gets significantly more pronounced, as well as the facets of the ego pertaining to the experience of being stuck, paralyzed, stifled, suppressed, controlled, muted, misunderstood. And so the interesting dynamic is that as the anger emerges, so does the suffocating self-expression limitation that will then be perceived as circumstantial. And so that's what we're dealing with here. And so because the reactivity of splitting is so acute and so particular to the perceived infractions of another person, they're not even specific to abandonment at all. They're more specific to the sense of somebody being untrustworthy or somebody being dangerous to them. And so when you talk about borderline personality disorder and the predominant splitting, which is what really defines it, that is not about abandonment at all. It's about being stuck. It's about being stifled. It's about being controlled. It's about being manipulated. It's about being hurt. It's about being abused. And it's about fixing that. It's about protecting oneself or vengeance or retribution or justice. And so some people with BPD can hold on to relationships for the cathartic benefit of punishing someone like a narcissist that might accurately represent the type of human being that originally afflicted the person with BPD. And so they have a very high entitlement towards vengeance, retribution, revenge. In fact, that becomes the basic architecture of their inner ruminations, not the avoidance of abandonment. Revenge. You know, that when if you were to actually talk to somebody with BPD and get a real sense of what's going on inside their mind, you know, you're going to find that this person has the juice of a psychopath, that they are doing, you know, the world a favor when they're walking away from relationships. When you see a borderline person catching a breather and it looks like they're giving you the cold shoulder silent treatment, no, they're protecting you from the rage that's within them. That if you were to keep pressing them or talking to them or trying to figure out what's wrong with your pretty girlfriend that's like walking away right now, you know, she's protecting you by trying to negotiate with the inner monologues of her mind that are conjuring angry ruminations that have brought into being every single infraction that she's accumulated in her mind are now right there, weighing heavily, fueling a fury that you would not want to see or touch. And so while you're trying to chase her down, she doesn't want to be bothered, because what you're going to do is you're going to disrupt her internal discussion. You see, while she's being present to her logic, that logic is the linchpin that's protecting you from a fury that you don't want to see, son. And so while she's walking away and trying to figure things out, when you keep asking what's wrong, talk to me, you're giving me the cold shoulder, you know, when you're forcing her to, or him, to be present to that inner dynamic, it's going to occur to them that you're making them angry. And so you need to give them some space right then and there. But if you are somebody with BPD, you can chime in. That when you actually look at what's going on with you, when you are angry and splitting, it could be, in some instances, the fear that somebody might reject or abandon you, but that is the least likely. The most likely is that you've accumulated these little infractions in conversations where you read into things and, you know, blow things out of proportion. But in your world, it seems perfectly natural and normal because it's always been this way. And that's the challenge with the emotional framework of different presentations of people, is that the emotions always occur to the individual to be proportional to the infraction or be caused by whatever they perceive to have caused them to feel the way that they do. And so what I've seen and discovered in conversations with people with BPD is it is actually not about abandonment avoidance at all. It's about protecting oneself, and that is significantly more important than any abandonment, that they would rather be independent of somebody that they determine is bad. Once they see someone as bad, it's over with. They have no problem moving on, no problem going cold turkey on a relationship with someone that they determine is unsafe or just not good enough for them or isn't everything that they suggested that they were. And so many of them, you know, are out there destroying narcissists and putting them in their place for almost for sport, you know. And so it really depends on the unique presentation of BPD, but it's more about protecting oneself than abandonment avoidance. And I would even put abandonment avoidance as something much lower on the importance totem pole than security and safety, than protecting yourself, or even getting revenge or expressing the inner anger. That would be highly prioritized, the expression and justification of the anger, than abandonment. And that's why they behave the way they do. They wouldn't behave the way they do if they were in fact avoiding abandonment.